Hey y'all, welcome back to the Power and Lifting Podcast. I'm your host, Solana Lewis, and today's episode is about intuitive eating. So, if you haven't listened to last week's episode about flexible dieting and if it fits your macros, definitely go back and listen to that episode because this one is kind of a continuation of that last episode, but obviously we're kind of diving more into the intuitive eating and what it means, who it's for, when it's beneficial to you. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to my powerlifting family, right? If you are competing in powerlifting, you want to compete in powerlifting, you take strength training seriously, but you don't compete, anything like that, you are in my powerlifting family. And as a nutrition coach, I want to make sure that I am educating you guys on what could be best for you when it comes to nutrition, right? Even though I'm talking to all of you guys, not just one of you, and giving you a specific to you advice and program, I still want you to understand what intuitive eating is and how it could benefit you potentially, because there's so much information out there, guys. It makes my head hurt. And the whole gist of the last episode about flexible dieting was explaining macros and if they can help you, and how I truly believe that macros are an excellent tool for nearly every single strength training human being. It can definitely help people who don't strength train too, but I'm talking to you guys. So if you are strength training, if you're training hard and you want to maximize your potential in the gym, to use tracking, to use a food scale to understand, okay, this is how I know how much food I'm eating. This is how I know how much protein I'm having, if I'm having enough protein, what it actually feels like to have blank amount of protein per day, which is probably, if you start tracking for the first time ever, is higher amounts of protein than you're used to eating. And it's just very helpful. It's a tool that can help, I truly believe, nearly everyone who is strength training and taking it very seriously. And intuitive eating also has its place. But before I dive into the benefits of intuitive eating, I just feel the need to say this. And I feel the need to say, if you are following macros and you're enjoying it, don't feel pressured to stop because of social media. Solana, what do you mean by that? I'll tell you. I feel like we're in a, when it comes to the whole diet culture, we're in this place of like, everyone accept their body for what it is, right? And I am not against that at all. Like, I think everyone should love themselves. I think health is more than just physical and what you look like. I think how you feel yourself. I think how you are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that is health. There's no one size that is the best size to be. And I appreciate that I'm in a sport where every single weight class, like there's a weight class for every single human being. That's why I love powerlifting. That's why I'm obsessed with it. Doesn't matter what size you are, you can compete in it, no matter what. But I do want to say that there are a lot of people who are saying that, like, tracking your food equals eating disorder. I hear that often. If you don't hear that, then okay, cool. That's great. And keep on not listening or not seeing that because it's false. I think a lot of people demonize macros because they're like, oh, well, if you track macros and you're tracking everything to the gram, you're going to end up with an eating disorder. You're going to be so obsessed with using the scale that you're not going to be able to even go out to eat and have fun with your friends. And there's some people who do become like that with tracking macros, but just keep in mind, those are people who took the tool of macro tracking and used it to an extreme. You can take anything and make it extreme and unhealthy. You can take exercising. Obviously, if you listen to my podcast, you probably love lifting weights. You can become so obsessed with lifting weights that you spend more time in the gym than you do outside talking to people. I forget the name of it, but there's like an actual condition where you're, addicted to exercise. And that's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to, work out for 6 hours a day, right? But at the end of the day, we can all agree exercise is healthy and can aid and does aid your health. So just know if this happens to reach you at all, or if it reaches one person, I'll be happy. if you are already tracking macros and you like it, it's helped you with your relationship with food. It's helped you understand how much food you should be eating. It's helped you make gains in and outside the gym. It's helped you to have a peace of mind because you're not wondering if what you ate that day is going to keep on track with your goals, or if you're going to be able to fit into your weight class, or etc. Then keep tracking. It's totally fine. I love tracking macros. I will always say that no matter what. And you never have to stop if you don't want to. But for the people who have tried tracking macros and who want to transition to intuitive eating, even if it's temporarily, even if you're like, yeah, I just want to have a season where I'm not tracking everything because I'm just tired of it, which is personally, I'll be open with you guys. That's the season I'm in. I'm in that season. I have not tracked macros since I walked off the platform at Nationals June 11th. It is now August 17th. I've never gone this long without tracking macros since I've been consistent with it. I've been consistently tracking macros for probably just over 5 years. So I'm 26. So since I was 21, I've not taken a break this long from tracking macros. But I just felt the need to take this break because for once I'm taking an intentional longer hiatus from competing. Nothing crazy. I'll be competing at the Arnold's in March of 2023. And that means there'll be about a 9-month gap from my last meet to my next meet. And that's okay. And so in the meantime, since I'm in a weight class that's heavier, I'm a 6'7", I was 63, I just have space to gain weight if I happen to gain weight, because I was sitting right at my weight, and to even be a couple pounds over does not stress me out because I can easily cut down when I need to, or even do a cut a week out to make sure I make weight, etc. So I wanted to allow myself the opportunity where I don't have to be, really as concerned about my weight, to see if I can just eat food and not necessarily track all of it to the gram. And so intuitive eating is literally when you eat food and you're not tracking it, you're just eating and paying attention to your body's cues of fullness. You're paying attention to when you're hungry and you're honoring your hunger. You're paying attention to when you're full and you don't say, oh, there's still food in the plate, so I have to finish it. You just honor that you're full and you stop eating. Intuitive eating is when you just allow yourself to kind of naturally go through the day and you're eating food till satiated, and then you just stop, and you don't necessarily have to know if it was exactly 37 grams of protein in the meal because you didn't track it, and that's okay. So that's in the gist. That's Solana's definition of intuitive eating. I feel like if you Google it, it'll be some specific answer, but that's the gist of it, y'all. And how do you transition to intuitive eating, and how do you make it work for you, especially if you're powerlifting? So number one, transitioning to intuitive eating, I fully believe if you're going to eat intuitively, you should do it after you've tried tracking macros. Because if you've never tracked, you don't know. You don't really know if you've been eating enough of the right macros, the right foods. It's just again a tool that will help you understand. Like, for example, if the goal is 150 grams of protein a day and you've never tracked to see if that's how much protein you eat, then how will you know if you actually eat that much protein? You could be leaving some gains on the table, right? Potentially. Same thing with carbs. If you're like, yeah, I should be eating like 200 grams of carbs a day, but you never tracked it, and for all you know, you're at 100 grams a day. You're under eating. That was me, guys. I used to undereat. I underate for years, and I'll talk about my whole past another time. But I will say, when I was under eating, because I started powerlifting at 19, when I was under eating and competing in powerlifting, I didn't realize it. Like, I truly, even though I did have some body image, some unhealthy body image going on, I truly did not understand that I was under eating for years. Like, I did not know. I just never tracked until I did. And I just didn't know. So you can think you know. You can really, in your whole freaking heart, believe you know that you eat the right macros. But if you just try it out for, I would say, a minimum 3 months, that's like the lowest amount of time I go, you can just know, okay, this is what 150 grams of protein feels like, right? For my example. So after you've tried tracking, so you just have an idea of what it's like to eat the right amount of macros, that's when you can more easily transition to intuitive eating. So that's step number one for transitioning to intuitive eating. If you're going to transition, track first, then transition. When you are transitioning, if you're transitioning from tracking your macros, what I recommend doing is first starting with, here are two things, right? Either I go one of two ways with my clients when they're like, hey, I want to try intuitive eating. Way number one, I say, cool. So you're going to have a full on track day and 6 days of tracking. And I will get them from 6 days of tracking to 5, 4, 3, 2, boom, we're not tracking. And I might do that as fast as literally in a month. Like over a month's time, over 4 weeks' time, you go from tracking every day to 0 tracking. Or I could even stretch it out longer depending on the person, just what they need, how they feel, if it's making them feel anxiety, etc. It just depends on you. But that's one way that I've gone about with my nutrition clients. Another way I've gone about it is, okay, let's pull back on tracking carbs and fats. But we're gonna track protein. Solana, why just track protein? Great question. Just to ensure they're still getting the right amount. Because again, I work with powerlifters, y'all. We need to stay strong, okay? If you let your protein drop to like something super low, you're going to be leaving gains on the table. I'm not even telling you how much protein you have to eat. I haven't even said that. Remember, 150 doesn't mean that's my number. I'm just using that number as an example. It's just the number that came to my head. So I might have you just try protein for a week, and besides tracking protein, have you focus on eating the same amount of meals you were eating prior. The thing with intuitive eating is if you keep it similar to when you were eating, to the food you were eating when you were tracking, it gets really, really easy. If you are someone who is eating 3 meals a day and 2 snacks, that's literally what I do. Again, doesn't mean you have to follow me. That's just naturally what works well for me. I wake up decently early. I eat right after I wake up. I always wake up starving. I have to eat before I go to sleep or I'll go to sleep hungry. I'm just like, my stomach's like, I need food. So if I don't eat 5 times a day, I'll just be hungry. That's all it is. I'm not saying it's the way to go. I'm not saying, if you're eating less than that, it's bad. But for Solana Lewis, whenever I've tried 3 meals a day, nope. I can't eat that much at one time. I get too full and I feel terrible. If I try 6 meals a day, nope, that's too stressful, too many meals. So 5 is just a number that's worked for me. I've learned that in my 26 years on this earth. But for me, if I'm eating 5 meals a day, okay, cool. So I'm currently doing intuitive eating like I told you, and I'm still eating 5 meals a day. I was eating 5 meals a day when I was tracking. I'm eating 5 meals a day now that I'm not tracking. It's such a simple thing. Like, just keep the rhythm that you had when you were tracking, but don't track it. And it's not to say you have to eat the exact same food that you were eating when you were tracking, but if you eat the same amount of meals and you keep those meals similar in structure, it'll be easy to transition to intuitive eating. What do I mean by keep the meals similar in structure? Great question. So, the way I stack meals typically is a protein, a carb source, and either a vegetable or a fruit, sometimes neither. That's it. That's all I mean. So if that's how you stack your food, which is a what I would call a balanced plate, keep eating meals that are structured that way. I'm not going to just be like, oh, I'm eating intuitively. Let me just have like a bowl of Apple Jacks and like, I don't know, Twizzlers for a meal, right? And again, please don't think I'm demonizing Apple Jacks. I had Apple Jacks last night. I'm not even kidding, y'all. I'm not even joking. So I love them. They're delicious. I hate Twizzlers. I don't know why I said Twizzlers. They're nasty. Actually, I do know why. I think a client ate Twizzlers last night, and I saw it in their PDF when I was doing their nutrition check-in. They're so nasty. Oh, my God. Anywho, so that's another way to do it. Like, eat similar foods, stack them the same way. Boom. That's it. That's a really simple way to have you start to eat more intuitively. To eat without tracking all your food. If you stack the meals the same and you eat the same amount of meals a day, the odds are very high that the calories are going to be about the same. Unless you drastically change the contents of the plate. And let's be real, if you're tracking macros, you know what you're doing to an extent. So, you know that if you switch from having a leaner protein source to a higher fat protein source to get more calories, you know that. So take that into account, and maybe you make sure that at least 1 meal a day has a leaner protein source because you want to have a higher fat protein source later. You can make those little adjustments, and it's nice because you don't have to be as stressed out about it because you're not like, oh man, will I go over on my fats today? Like, you can kind of pull back on that thinking, just be like, will this satiate me? And also, if I have this delicious meal that's, a bit higher fat, what can I do earlier in the day, if that's my dinner? What can I do earlier in the day to make sure my meals are a bit lower in fat so that I still feel like I'm balancing it out? I'm balancing it out so I'm not blowing my calories out the wazoo, but also I'm happy with what I'm eating. So those are the two ways I tend to transition my clients from macros to just going to intuitive eating. But the key truly is keeping the amount of food you eat the same and keep stacking your plate the same way that you were. Those are huge keys. So, who is intuitive eating for? So it can literally be for anyone, right? It can be for anyone. I think a lot of people should feel comfortable. You should feel comfortable having a day where you don't track and you don't panic. So I think I think that it can be literally for anyone. If you are a powerlifter and you're like, Solana, like, should I start intuitively eating? Like, I don't know if I should. Here's what I'll say. If you're stressed out from tracking, or you're just tired of tracking and you just don't want to do it, then start to transition to intuitively eating. And there are middle grounds. I have some clients who won't track 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but they track the other 5 days. But on the days that they don't track, I'm very clear. You're still going to eat about the same amount of meals. You still want to prioritize having a certain amount of fruits and vegetables daily. You're still going to prioritize having a certain amount of protein in each meal so that you can know, okay, I'm still following the same habits. Boom. I should be on track. And then from there, since we're in a weight class sport, I monitor the weight. We monitor measurements. And we just see if the scale starts to dip up and we don't want it to, we may pull back. We may go to either one untracked day or just be like, hey, on your untracked days, can you adjust blah, blah, blah? And they do it and see how it goes. If it's the opposite, if there's someone who's an undereater and they start to lose weight, I'm like, you know what? You either eat more on that untracked day, eat more, or we're going to have to track it again. Right? But you can just kind of tell by looking at other things like your body composition changes, like the scale, measurements. I'm huge on two things. I love measurements because you can just see like what body parts are growing, what parts aren't. I see it all as data. I know some people have a hard time with like maybe taking measurements or like they don't like it. Overall, you gotta do what's better for you to help you with your mental health. But I love measurements, like literally using a measuring tape, like a flexible one, to just measure like certain areas to see where you are, and scale weight because we're in a scale sport, a weight class sport. So we just have to use it. It's just something we have to do. So that is kind of how you can have a middle ground. You can have a middle ground with intuitive eating. I think the biggest thing that intuitive eating gives you is the awareness of your body's cues. I remember when I first took precision nutrition as a course. It's like I don't know how long it took me, but it was pretty fast. And I was so excited because this was 3.5 years ago I took it, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna coach nutrition, woo. And PN, precision nutrition, talks a lot about habits. It's all habits. There's no macros in it. I told y'all in the last episode, go check it out, that I took a macro course too, because I want to be well-versed in everything. And as a nutrition coach, especially for powerlifters, macros are going to be a thing for most of us. But I wanted to understand habits. And so what precision nutrition teaches pretty well is that you need to be able to know, like, hey, I am hungry. Hey, I am full. And one thing that macros can make it tougher to do is kind of differentiate when you're hungry and full. Make it tougher to do that. So when you are transitioning to intuitive eating, what's really important about it too is your body hungry? Like, do you know when your body's hungry? Do you know when you're full and you can say, hey, I may have 7 more bites of food on the plate, but I am full, so I'm going to honor that and I'm going to chill. I can put this food away, have it later. That's another thing I like about intuitive eating. It can make it so you have to become more aware of it if you've practiced that. I do feel like it's important to know when your body is hungry. I will say from personal experience, and it's not a bad thing that macros made it so I didn't ever pay attention to when I was hungry or full, because the reality is that at one point in my life I was working 2 jobs, and those jobs were crazy hours, and I was also, powerlifting. And this was when I was on my route to IPF World, so I was like taking longer in the gym. A lot was going on. Macros helped me a lot because I didn't have time to think about being hungry. And again, I'm an under eater, right? So if I did not feel hungry, and when you're busy, it's hard to feel hungry, by the way. And I'm sure you guys, some of you know this because we're in America. A lot of us are in America. Not all of us are, but in America, we just run around like crazy. Other countries, I know y'all run around too. Trust me, I'm not just saying it's an American thing, but as just someone who's been in America my whole life, I feel like we are the country that is always running and working and running and working and working and running, and that's it. So it's helpful with macros to make sure you're getting the food and nutrients that you need. It's also nice when you can to just understand, like, hey, I can wait till I'm hungry to eat food. It's just a good thing to be able to do and differentiate. So I believe that flexible dieting can be for everyone. I believe it can be for powerlifters, intuitive eating. I will say there are some basic things to keep in mind when you're powerlifting and you want to try intuitive eating. Number one, are you okay with the scale fluctuating? And are you in a place where that's okay for you? Meaning, if you're like, okay, I want to try intuitive eating, a good time to do that may be when you're not near meat. Like I'm doing it now and I'm very far away from my next meet, right? The timing makes more sense. I will be honest, the scale has gone up a little bit. It's not stressing me out. If I was close to meat, I couldn't have that happening. Because that would make my cut harder, and no one wants to do a hard cut. So, I'm not saying that you should necessarily be cutting if you're competing in the sport. I think most people should not actually cut. I think most people should walk around and just go into a meet and compete. But there are times where it makes sense for certain people to cut, and I'm someone who does cut if I have to. So, if you're far off from a meet, it's a better time. If you're close to a meet and you want to be in a certain weight class and you know you're close to the top end of the weight class, meaning you could be over or could go over, maybe it's not the right time to do intuitive eating, right? So just make sure it makes sense for you. Make sure you're not super close to meat if that's going to be an issue. If you are close to meat, but you will go in and compete at whatever weight you're at, more power to you. Intuitive eats, that's totally fine. But I will say, just make sure you are paying attention to your timing. I think another time where intuitive eating can be potentially nice is closer to holidays, where we go out more, like people are eating more. It can be nice to not feel like you have to restrict eating certain foods when you go out with friends. So that can be a nice time to do it too. But I will also say it depends on the person, right? Like some people, if you're like, hey, I want to lose weight, I'll be blunt, it's hard to lose weight and eat intuitively. It's tough, guys. That is a difficult thing to do because it's very easy. Like when it comes to dieting down, if you've done it before, you're sometimes going to be hungry. Hunger is not a bad thing. Hunger is just your body saying it's hungry. If you're cutting and you have to be in a caloric deficit to be losing weight, that means you're eating more or eating less calories than you are burning to put you in a caloric deficit so that you will lose weight. If you eat intuitively, that's really tough because essentially if you eat till you're full, you're probably going to be eating at maintenance or above. High chance. So if you want to lose weight, that is probably not the time to eat intuitively. If you're close to meat, that is probably not the time to eat intuitively if you want to make sure you are in a certain weight class. If you do cuts for your meats and you know you're going to cut down for your weight class, that is not the time. That is not the time. If you're close to meat, then to do intuitive eating. If you are someone who is in a maintenance phase, but you know that every single time it gets around, let's say the holidays, you always put on weight, and you have made a decision that this is the year that you just prefer to not do that. Not saying you don't love everybody, but saying that I want to honor the fact that I want to not gain weight during holidays. Maybe it's not the time for you to, when that time comes, holiday season comes, to be eating intuitively the entire time. I always say this, there's always a middle ground. There can be some intuitive eating with tracking at the same time. It can be a beautiful sweet spot. But those are times where you may want to consider, hey, maybe I should track macros and not be eating intuitively. So, I really love talking about nutrition, guys. I really, really do. I think I want to end this by talking about a bit more about why I personally decided to eat intuitively for this long for the first time ever since I've been tracking. And I already said, like, I'm at a place where, like, I was in a good spot in my weight class. If I gain weight, it's not a big deal, etc. I think for me, I literally just got a little tired of tracking. That's it. It's nothing crazy. I felt mentally tired from tracking. And like I said, though, all the things are in place for me to be at a place where I can intuitively eat. I'm farther out from the meat. I'm really focused on my business. I'm still training my butt off. I'm still training in the gym very hard. I'm hitting some awesome PRs. It's really, really great. I'm thankful for it. And I know that after 5 years straight of tracking, I'm hitting my protein. I'm still prioritizing. I have currently a minimum of 2 servings of fruits a day, at least 1 full serving, if not 2 servings of vegetables a day. I also have my supplement for greens that I have daily, so that's another serving of fruits and veggies right there. So even though I'm no longer tracking it, I'm still caring about micronutrients. I still care about my protein. I am, for the first time, really focused on if I'm full after I eat. Like, I am not trying to just hit a number. I'm just like a number of food or grams. I'm like, if I'm full, I'm gonna stop. And so I just now automatically put less food in the plate because I know I can always go back and get more. It's been a nice transition for me. I am enjoying it. Like I said, the scale has slightly gone up. So Solana's gonna pull back a little bit. I'm not gonna go back to tracking just yet, but I'm gonna pull back a little bit. A little bit, you know. Sometimes that ice cream does not have to be had. All right, let's be honest here. Gotta be honest with myself. But I'm just at a place where I'm enjoying it. And also, again, though, when I transition to intuitive eating, everything else in my life is staying the same. So this is another big key. You don't want to lower your activity level and start eating intuitively at the same time. There's no reason for that, and that's probably gonna not end well, right? So for me, I always train right now 5 times a week, and I have been doing 5 times a week for 2 years, and I'm still training 5 times a week. I was tracking my steps. It was at least 10K a day. I've increased my steps daily on purpose. I'm enjoying walking a lot more, so I increased my step count. I'm paying attention. I'm definitely slacking a bit on here on this, but I'm paying attention to water intake. So, nothing. The only thing that's changed is intuitive eating. My activity level's the same. I mean, the same amount of food, like the same 5 meals a day. If I have dessert, I do stop when I'm full, and I do make sure I have a small amount of it, because I have a massive sweet tooth, so I can't go out and buy, like, a massive 4-pint ice cream thing from, like, BJ's, because that would be horrible. I would eat it in a day, and no. So I'm careful, right? Like, I know I love dessert, so my house doesn't really have dessert in it. And if it does, it's desserts that I can't orally overeat because I don't want to. Example, I might buy dark chocolate. I don't know about you. Dark chocolate's very savory. I could never handle having a whole bar of dark chocolate, but I could have 2 pieces. I freaking love ice cream. I love ice cream, guys. And so right now, I buy this oat milk based ice cream. Honest to God, I buy it because I can't overeat on it, because it's just okay. It's not delicious. It's just okay. If I bought Baskin Robbins ice cream up in this house, I would be a whole weight class up by now. I just know myself. So I just wanted to kind of end this by saying, like, there is a space of loving yourself and tracking macros at the same time. You can love yourself and eat intuitively. You can love where you are. You can love your body and want to lose weight. You can love your body and want to maintain. You can love your body and not be okay with gaining weight. Like, just be aware. 'Cause again, I feel like the narrative is being pushed so hard. Like love yourself is now turning into you can have unhealthy habits and it's totally fine. And I just want to encourage you to have healthy habits. Give yourself goals. And the goal can be to eat intuitively because you want to and you love yourself. The goal can be to track macros because you want to and you love yourself, whatever. But just be aware. Like, there's a lot of pushing this dynamic of, like, someone actually told me once, like, they feel like they should be trying to, like, get rid of some habits, be like healthy habits, like literally, like, oh, maybe I should work out less because this means I'm assessing my body if I work out this much, etc. And this person I know well, who was telling me this, because they were like, oh, I just feel like I'm always being told to, like, I must have, a weird image of myself if I'm doing this much. And I was like, dude, whoever is telling you that is just insecure. Like, you can literally have 35 goals for yourself, hit them all. Some of them involve losing weight, some of them involve hitting PRs, and you can love yourself. So I kind of want to just say that because, again, I feel like a narrative being really pushed hard with this whole where we are in the world today and body image. It's a lot of information. Get off Instagram, set your own goals, do your own thing. All right. Guys, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. I am so thankful to have this podcast. I love it so much. The Powerlifter podcast is literally my baby. And thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, please leave me a 5-star rating. Write me a review if you're on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a rating if you're on Spotify. We're also on YouTube now, so check us out on YouTube, please. And give us some love. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to YouTube. If you want to help out with the podcast, scroll to the end of the show notes. You can support the podcast there. I appreciate you. I love you. Catch you next time on the Power Lifting Podcast.